Hello and welcome to The Player's Voice, the RPA podcast. I am your host, Ethan Waller, and today I am joined by General Secretary Christian Day and Vice Chair of the Players Board, Harry Elrington. And we are going to discuss 2023 as an RPA and look forward to the things the RPA are going to be tackling come 2024. But first off, gents, thank you for joining me. Baz, I'll go to you fresh from a trip to Georgia. How are you, mate? How's things? Pretty hefty travel?
It's been good, mate. We left last week on Wednesday, and I can say Georgia was a very lovely place. We had police escorts to the game, amazing stadium, very friendly people. Lots of good food. So I'm feeling a little bit tired, but refreshed. Got into some sulfur baths, which were nice. So, had a good week, mate. Thank you.
Absolutely superb. And Christian, how are you, mate? How's things? Busy week for you?
Well, it's only Monday, but Monday's been busy, yeah. But everything's pretty full on at the moment. It's long meets, long hours, but doing some important stuff.
Absolutely, and I think we'll sort of dive straight into this podcast and come to you, Christian. Really, we'll look at the year in review and start right at the beginning. You were elected as General Secretary in January, and obviously since then there has been a plethora of stuff that's happened, not just for the RPA but in the game in general. We'll have a talk through. But how have you found it since walking into the role? Being elected in. Sorry, I absolutely put you down there.
Yeah, it was obviously a big honour. So that first and foremost to say that, we changed the way we do things. We changed our constitution, gave the power to the players, so to speak. So it's obviously a big honour to get that kind of that role, the first ever elected General Secretary. So that's amazing. I will say, it's testing times for rugby. It really is. And the players, are the game. That I will always have that opinion. So I think we're doing some really good stuff. We're in the thick of it. We probably are. We're probably involved in stuff we've never been involved with as an association before. But, as I'm learning, this is my first time in a job like this where you really are top of the organisation, and it's really challenging. It really is. I said it's long hours, and, you don't want to let people down. You want to look after your staff, and that's before you even get to, all the challenges that rugby has at the moment. So it's exciting, but I'm not going to say it's easy.
No, absolutely not. And where's the fun if it's easy, right? But I think from a player's perspective, we can, and myself and Harry, who have been on the board for quite some time, it was clear when you came in the changes that have happened, certainly visibly from our point of view, but obviously we know there's a lot that goes in behind the scenes as well. Harry, how have you found sort of the regime under Christian?
I'll get to say something nice about him. It's been really good. Like, I think Christian, he stepped forward the RPA so much in such a short time. And I feel like a lot more of a team now, I'd say, whereas before it was sort of individualized clubs and we're all a bit separate. And now I'd say the last sort of 9 to 12 months, I really do feel like we're all heading into a direction together rather than before potentially we were splintering off. I know he's worked I can't swear, but really hard. So I can definitely see a big growth in the last 9 months.
I don't think we can call it a regime though, Beef. I think that's probably
hey, whatever we need to call it. No, but I think I'll agree with Harry as well there. I think it's been clear sort of how unified we are, that, seeing the team that we've got at the moment and not necessarily just that, but I think the players at the moment have realised, probably because of the one of the big focuses that we had when you came in, Christian, was sort of the feedback loops and making sure that information was put down to players as best as possible, and their feedback was relayed to us efficiently too. And I think that's been a massive step forward from where we were, and the players' voices is being heard in a time that's hugely crucial for the game at the moment.
I think as well, like we've really set out to go and get some stuff in the last 12 months. Like I'm never shy of saying what I think we should be doing or what direction we should be headed in. And that doesn't mean that you always succeed, but we've certainly gone out and done some kind of landmark things, which I think like I said, it's exciting. It is challenging. If you're trying to break new ground, you are going to fail sometimes. So it's in that sense, I think we have done some really good stuff.
I completely agree. And what a wonderful segue onto my next point. Clearly, there's been a lot that we've, as you say, that we've targeted. One of those things was representing the women's game even more so than we do already. And in February, we did some pretty landmark things there in the maternity policy that was put in place. And of course, we launched our Premier 15s membership too. How important was that as a target for us as an RPA, Christian?
Yeah, two very different things, really. So, like, widening our membership to me is just how I see representation of players. Like, I don't believe that we should be kind of elitist as an organisation. We shouldn't just look after the very pinnacle of the game. We should, if anything, we should be looking after the players who really do need it. So, in terms of representing the women's game, that was something I kind of pledged as I stood to be General Secretary, but it was off the back of working with the Red Roses for probably a good 2 years before that, when I really had, and the England Sevens girls, to be fair, and they're massively inspiring in the way they work, the way they go about their daily lives, which are very, very different to the majority of the elite men, and certainly then were very, very different. So, that was just how I believe the RPA should look. I think we should be looking after everyone we can. And we've seen that in the last 18 months, and then the maternity policy was the accumulation of like 18 months of work. So it'd always been known that we needed something bespoke, and I think New Zealand had done something, but nothing quite as tangible as what we did. And to finally get that over the line, and we did it, like you said about the feedback loop. So we did it with a kind of a 4-player committee who worked with myself and some RFU staff to build something that they thought was appropriate. I think that was what made it really pleasing. And then we finally got it across the line, and then to see 2 players already using that is amazing. So that's something, we can be really proud of, that we were involved with, and we co-created with the RFU and with the players, and was a massive step forwards for the game globally. So, off the back of that, practically every Rugby Players Association, but also other sporting associations have got in touch. What have you done? How did you do it? What was the best bits? And we can really say we led the way there.
No, and that's incredible to see. And also, while we're still on the subject of the women's game, there was also the Red Roses contracts in June that we obviously assisted in finalising those, which has been another string to the bow. And it's like you say, the women's game at the moment, I mean, for quite some time, they've been a hugely inspiring team, the Red Roses. And to see us spread into the 15s game it is absolutely brilliant. But moving on, there's also, whilst there's been positives like that, there's also, as you've alluded to, Christian, there's been quite some challenges too. Clearly, everything that happened at the start of last season with Wasps Worcester, and then, later down the line, London Irish. Clearly, some very, very difficult periods for the game. But how much did we help with those teams and those scenarios? How involved were we in that? I mean, obviously, I know that.
Yeah, so it's like, for everything that we're proud of, and look, I'll say I'm proud of what we did to help the players at those teams. But I mean, this really was quite a dark period for rugby in this country. It was dark for the RPA as well, and obviously the worst with those players who were actually affected. So, as much as I'm proud of the help, it's one of those situations you never want to be involved with. So we actually did a bit of tallying up the other day. So I think it's 263 players directly helped. 3 of those clubs, obviously, we represented. 2 we didn't, but we just thought we had to step up and step in. So the Worcester Warriors women and the Jersey Reds. And that work still goes on now. So, it feels like an age ago when, Worcester were displaying some pretty alarming signs. And that work still goes on now, assisting those players with different kind of legal claims and awards where we can, hopefully get those players back some money. We had some amazing news just last week about the London Irish players and them receiving their what's called the Protective Award, And that's the work of RPA staff backing those players. And it ranged from everything. Some players, lost their contracts, and the next day they had clubs after them and they moved on, and it's not pleasant, but they moved on. Whereas other players really did need more hands-on assistance, hands-on support. And that's where our staff, and there's too many to mention, really all kind of mucked in and tried to do the best we could with a pretty terrible situation.
And Baz, clearly, a former London Irish player, just how important is it that the player's voice is part of everything with the game going forward and developing to ensure situations like this never happen again?
I think it's vital. Obviously, being there at Irish for 7 years, pulled me through the game and coming out of uni, gave me my first contract. It's probably the same as Worcester when you sort of see them, they should be there at the start of the year and they're not there. So it is really sad still. I have a lot of great memories there and a lot of great friends who have luckily enough picked up contracts, but some haven't, and that's just the reality. So it's absolutely crucial that we are front and centre in any decision that's made. And we need to be in every conversation, from however small that is to however big it is. We have to be in every conversation because we are the product and we deserve to be there. But I think just backing up on that point about the amount of support that's been given, it's still now, obviously there's a few Irish boys that have come to Gloucester and they're obviously still being helped and by the PDMs. So it's countless hours of hard work that a lot of people don't see. And everyone's really, really stepped up. So I can be proud of the team that we've got and being part of that team. If that's small, if anything, it's really shown how strong we have acted over the last sort of 12 months. Yeah,
and it's one of those things as well that I think that moving forward in an ideal world, we've spoken about it at length. In an ideal world, we hit a point where everyone is a member of the RPA. Membership is free, membership is covered, so that we can truly get the whole voice of the Premiership. We have obviously a huge portion of the Premiership currently in now, but I think to have a unified stance moving forward and ensure that we are best represented in the entire Prem is going to be massive as we move into what is going to be sort of, the new rugby. There's conversations obviously about Prem 1, Prem 2, all these things that are developing. And it's crucial that the players are part of that, because without them, there is no game. But we'll move on slightly. Clearly, as part of the RPA as well, we have some sub-committees. There's our Diversity and Inclusion Board, and of course, there's our Welfare Advisory Board, each of which has some RPA members that sit on it from different walks of life to ensure that we've got a good spread of opinion and input. So we've had some big achievements with that. We'll start off with the Diversity Inclusion Board. They launched a new action plan in April that is for the elite game of rugby in England, to ensure that it's as inclusive as possible. The work of that board is huge. They meet regularly and ensure that England continues to be one of the most inclusive places to play rugby in the world, which is what we're looking for, really, Christian, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the important thing you mentioned there is that kind of diversity of thought. I think most people would say rugby has a very traditional makeup, a very kind of old-fashioned kind of look to it. And I actually think that's being challenged now. And that's where it's important, like you say, that we have it challenged by the players themselves. So the D&I board has been in operation, I think, for over 12 months, has been co-creational in terms of the kind of the education that's gone out to players. And it is literally just listening to different voices within the game and seeing exactly what direction those different voices think the game should be going in. It's in my opinion, it's a really powerful thing and gives power to those players.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, there's also the Welfare Advisory Board, which has been involved on a number of things. Obviously, our brain health study, and more recently, there's a lot of conversation around the instrumented mouth guards and how that's been rolled out and the information that's come with that. Baz, how have you found the instrumented mouth guards as both a player and as a player representative?
I've actually really enjoyed them. And I'd say on the whole at Gloucester, it's been good. I'd say there's still a little bit of work to be done with regards to making sure that they're comfortable, because I'd say that was probably the biggest pushback along some players would be making sure they're nice and comfortable. But for me personally, they've been really good, and it's been interesting to actually, because I'm a bit of a nose, you all know I'm a bit of a nose, been looking at the actual data from games with the sports scientists. So I've actually really enjoyed and seen different peaks and during games and relating that to hits. So it's actually been really interesting for me on a personal point of view. But I think they're really, really going to be really important going forward, and fingers crossed we can get the buy-in across the board and push that forward, because obviously brain health is so important, and I think it's a really positive step.
It has dawned on me that, having said that, there might be a number of people listening to this who are unaware of what the instrumented mouthguard trial currently is. So what it is it's a gum shield with some tech in it that measures head acceleration events, so that our medics on the side or our sports scientists have the data of just how many times we're exposed to these events. Obviously, that in turn can help with some concussion diagnosis. It can sort of bring people off a HIA. It's something that is really positive, and ultimately players are being asked to wear it in training and in games so that we can see where the greatest amount of exposure is. And hopefully over time we can reduce that exposure and make the game a bit safer for players. But Christian, I was interrupting you as you were saying.
The key thing is it's two different things, isn't it? There's concussion and then there's exposure. It's two different kind of measurements. So concussion are those kind of big blows that cause brain injuries. I actually think they've been pretty, rugby has been on the front foot with concussion for a long time now. We've got HIA, we've got other sports looking at us. Can we learn? And exposure is something different. Exposure is that kind of low level, repetitive hitting your head. And it brings a different danger. So that's why these gum shields are incredibly important in terms of determining that over a 12-month period and then over your career. And they are, when you think about trying to get take up on something, there can't be something much more intimate than a gum shield that you're gonna have to put in your mouth. And if a player's been used to a certain type of gum shield or a favorite gum shield for a long time, getting the player to change isn't easy. So there's got to be some praise to the players who have used the uptake straight away. And I can say that from our lobbying that next year's gum shields are going to be made by a pretty well-known manufacturer to the players, which we hope is going to produce a better fit and even greater take-up again. So really crucial to the future of the game. And you've got to give some raps to kind of the RFU, PRL for funding the initial study, and then World Rugby getting involved as well now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've said to numerous players quite a few times that, it's one of the easiest things that we can do to help improve the game going forward, to be actively involved in this study in an area that's so important at the moment. And the only thing you've got to do to partake is chuck a gum shield in. For me, it's a no-brainer. It's the best way that we can try and make the game safer with very little real input. Just chuck your gum shield in and carry on about your day. But so 2023, a lovely wrap on that. A lot of the hard work that we've been doing, and some of it has obviously been very front and center and in the news. Other stuff's been pretty behind the scenes. But moving on to 2024, we've obviously set out some goals in our pre-season visits to clubs this year. One of the biggest things is becoming part of the Professional Game Partnership. Christian, I don't know if you want to just sort of explain what that partnership is and why we want to be signatories on that.
Yeah, so this was one of the big kind of headline things that I spoke about being elected. We know that the previous game agreement is coming to an end. It was a long-term agreement, 8 years, and a new one's going to come into effect in July 24. And it was a big ambition of mine that the players have to be signatories to that agreement. We've never been signatories to a game agreement previously. We've been involved or asked, but we've never been truly consulted and from the ground up and eventually becoming signatories. So that's, we're a long way down the path with that now. A lot of work has already gone in, essentially with the aim for me of the RPA is that we want to make England the best place to play rugby in the world. And I think we have to admit that in recent times it's not been, and we have to put plans in place how it can be in the future. There's a number of environments around the world who are doing things in different ways, different levels of investment to make that happen. And it's my job to try and make the people who govern the game see that by investing in the game and the whole system for all the players, we can see really, fundamental change and improvement for everybody.
And as we go into this partnership, and really for most of the things that we've sort of been lobbying for, how important has it been to have these relationships with other player unions, not necessarily just in rugby, but we've obviously had a relationship with unions in other sports as well. We've spoken to the PFA and we've spoken to the PCA as well. And these relationships have really been invaluable to us, haven't they?
Yeah. So look, we're a member of the International Player Federation, which is a global organization and brings players associations from all around the world together. So that's, for me, I'm a big believer that you should consult with people, you should learn from people, and then you should try and bring it together to make it your own. So, I've had engagement with, for instance, the New Zealand Rugby Players Association down under, who've got an incredibly progressive CBA in their environment. I do lots of work with, European associations, like the Irish Players Association, for instance, is very good. But then we've also got outside rugby. So, I've had meets with the NRL, with the Australian Cricketers Association, with the NFLPA, with the PFA, always trying to learn, always trying to take little tidbits of what they do and bring it into our sport. And can we make it fit for rugby? Because there's no one model that's perfect. There's no one solution to every problem that rugby has. So can we find lots of little solutions along the way to improve the whole system? And I'll keep coming back to that kind of reference. It's the system that we need to improve. And for me, my job is to support, promote and protect players, nothing else. I can't fix every problem in rugby, but if I can support players a little bit better or promote them better or just try and be there when things go wrong with a plan, that's what the role of the RPA is.
And I think that's been pretty prevalent. There's an air of sort of improvement from top to bottom throughout the RPA, and that was highlighted to me pretty highly in the May Players Board last year, where we actually we looked outside of rugby for that learning and sport in general. We had Cal Roper come down from the Trade Union Congress and come into our players board, and he really shed a light on sort of how other trade unions operate. And it was clear to us that, there were some things that we could do to really improve both things from a rep point of view and also a feedback point of view from our members, which has been massive. And myself and Christian were lucky enough to go to the Congress event in Liverpool earlier in the year, where we met up with Carl, the PFA, and a newly formed sort of boxers association, and got to sort of share ideas and have conversations there. And hopefully that'll be a group that continues going forward, that can, again, help us go from strength to strength as a trade union. Thank you very much for your time. And also thank you to you for listening. As always, if there's any topics that you want to hear about or anyone you particularly want on the podcast, feel free to tweet us using #ThePlayersVoice. A big thank you again to our guests, Christian and Harry. I've been Ethan Waller. Thank you very much. All the best.